Imagine pulling off 28.8 million conversations with the most advanced AI on the planet and doing it through 25,000 fake identities without ever paying for a single real account. That is what Anthropic alleges happened. Not over years, not through some elaborate hack, over 44 days. And according to a letter sent to the United States Senate, the operation was run by one of China's largest technology companies. So how did it happen? And does the law have any answer? This story begins earlier than most people realize. In February 2026, Anthropic published a detailed report accusing three Chinese AI laboratories, DeepSeek, Moonshot AI, and Minimax, of conducting what it called industrial-scale campaigns to extract Claude's capabilities through roughly 24,000 fraudulent accounts and more than 16 million exchanges. Minimax alone drove over 13 million of those exchanges. The report was alarming. Then, on April 24th, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy issued a memorandum warning of exactly this kind of foreign distillation of American AI models, committing to coordinate with US AI companies against it. The warning had barely dried before the next campaign allegedly started. Anthropic claims that between April 22 and June 5, 2026, a 44-day window, operators affiliated with Alibaba and its Quen AI lab conducted 28.8 million exchanges with Claude using approximately 25,000 fraudulent accounts and commercial proxy services to bypass geographic restrictions that bar Chinese entities from accessing the model. On June 10th, Sarah Heck, Anthropic's head of policy, sent a letter to Senate Banking Committee Chair Tim Scott and Ranking Member Elizabeth Warren, calling it the largest known distillation attack on Anthropic to date. Bloomberg first reported the letter on June 24th. The story went wide overnight. To understand why these numbers matter, you need to understand what distillation actually is. It is not hacking. Nobody broke into a server. Nobody stole source code or model weights. Distillation works differently, and in some ways, that makes it harder to stop. You query a powerful model millions of times, and you use its responses as training data for your own. Done at sufficient scale, the smaller model begins to approximate the larger one's capabilities. It absorbs the reasoning, the structure, the judgment, without ever touching the underlying architecture. Anthropic's letter describes the alleged campaign as specifically targeting Claude's software engineering, agentic reasoning, and cybersecurity capabilities, the abilities embodied in its Mythos Preview Frontier model. This was not random querying. According to Anthropic, it was a precision extraction designed to help Alibaba's Quen model close the gap on America's most capable AI systems. Now look at the timing. On April the 20th, 2026, 2 days before the alleged campaign began, Alibaba released Quen 3.6 Max Preview. The company described it as fast, capable, and benchmark crushing. It topped 6 major coding and agentic benchmarks. It beat Claude on instruction following. Then the alleged 44-day extraction window opened. Then, on June 23rd, Alibaba filed a federal lawsuit against the Pentagon after being added to its list of Chinese military companies. The company was fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously. Here is where the story gets genuinely complicated. Alibaba has denied the allegations. Eric Cambria, a professor of artificial intelligence at Singapore's Nanyang Technological University, noted that the boundary between legitimate use and adversarial exploitation is often blurry in the AI industry because distillation itself is a routine model compression technique used across the field. A prominent Chinese commentator called Anthropic's move a kick away the latter tactic. Beijing's official line is that these are baseless smears, and the evidence gap is real. Independent researchers have not attributed Quen's benchmark improvements to a distillation campaign. That the Quen release coincided with the period Anthropic describes as the extraction window is a correlation. It is not a proven causal link. No legal proceeding has been filed. No court has assessed the evidence. No independent body has verified that 28.8 million exchanges produced a measurably better version of Quen. Anthropic's own letter does not assert that a law has been broken. It asks Congress to write one. U.S. trade secret law, export control regulations, and terms of service agreements all offer partial coverage, but none cleanly reaches the act of querying a public API at volume through falsified accounts to generate training data. On June 24th and 25th, Senators Bill Hagerty and Andy Kim announced plans to introduce an amendment to must-pass defense legislation. A related bipartisan House bill, backed by Representatives Bill Huizenga and Sydney Kamlaga-Dove, is also under consideration. That same week, Anthropic announced it had disabled access to its Fable 5 and Mythos 5 models in compliance with an export control directive from the U.S. government, which cited national security authorities and ordered suspension of access by any foreign national, whether inside or outside the United States. Which brings us to the tension that neither side wants to name out loud. Anthropic is now valued at $965 billion after a $65 billion Series H round. The company filed confidentially for an IPO this month, with a listing potentially coming as soon as this autumn. Sarah Heck's letter to the Senate described distillation attacks as turning hundreds of billions of dollars in American AI investment into a massive subsidy for geopolitical competitors. That is also, conveniently, an argument for protecting a company about to go public. Maybe both things are true. Maybe the security concern is genuine and the commercial interest is also real. The two are not mutually exclusive, but they do make it harder to assess where the alarm ends and the advocacy begins. What is not in dispute is this: the law has not kept pace with what AI can do or what competitors will do to acquire it. 25,000 fake accounts, 28.8 million exchanges, 44 days. If Anthropic's allegations are accurate, this was not opportunism. It was a coordinated industrial operation, running during a White House warning. Across a model the U.S. government has since restricted from the entire world. The question Congress is now sitting with is the same one the entire industry is sitting with. When the product is a conversation and the theft is having too many of them, what does a law even look like?